So, this is a question which is based on a context which says in a football stadium, the first row of seats has 610 seats. So, if I just talk about the number of rows and the number of seats, the first row has 610 seats, the second row has 620 seats, and the third has 630 seats. The stadium sells seats from the middle of a row outwards. Each row must be completely sold before they sell tickets for the next row. Find the number of seats that can be sold if only the front two rows are used. So basically, if only the front two rows are used, that means I need to add these two seats, and the answer here would be 1230. Second, find the number of seats that can be sold if only the front three rows are sold. That means I need to add the first three terms of this sequence. So basically, somewhere or the other, we have reached sequences. So if I have to see the first three rows, that means I just add 630 to 1230, or I can add 610 plus 620 plus 630, and this sum comes out to be 1860. These are the two answers. Now, it is asking us to create a formula for the total number of seats that can be sold if n rows are used. That means I'll have to create a fresh sequence. Of course, if I understand first row is sold, that means the seats that can be sold are only the first seats 610. But if two rows are sold, the sum of the first two terms, that is 1230, in totality 1230 seats can be sold. If the first three rows are sold, 1860 seats are gone. This means if I have to create a formula, if the first n rows, that means there is something which is getting added every time. So now I try to generate the nth term for this new sequence based on the first two parts. So if I create a formula for the total number of rows, what I'm going to do is I know that this difference is 620, this difference is 630, of course, this difference would be 640. And this is my first difference, which is not a constant. But if I take out the second difference, that is 10, 10, and 10, that means this is a quadratic sequence. If it is a quadratic sequence, it is of the form an square plus bn plus c. And if I simply say the sum of actually or the number of seats at the nth row, if my second difference is 10, that means my a is 5. This implies that A is 5. So I have reached the formula 5n square plus bn plus c. Now either I can use it in my calculator and take out the value of b and c, or if it is a non-calc paper, I can also take out b and c using equations. So half job is done at 5n square plus bn plus c. So now if my n is 1, I put my n as 1 here. I get 5 plus b plus c is equals to the first term, which is 610. This implies that b plus c is 605. Let's go to the second equation. Put n as 2. If you put n as 2, you are going to get 20 plus 2b plus c. When you put n as 2, the answer is 1230. So 2b plus c is 1230 minus 20, which is 1210. On solving both these equations, which everybody knows how to solve simultaneous linear equations, we are going to get the value of b as 605 and c as 0. So when I go to my formula, when I create my formula, I can say that the formula is nothing but 5n square plus 605n. This is a quadratic sequence. So where if I see row wise, it was a linear sequence. But if I talk about the totality, I have created another row and I'm taking the sum of the terms simultaneously. That is a quadratic sequence. So now we are at the D part. If I'm at the D part here, it says find the number of seats that can be sold. So sold means I am selling all the first 29 rows first and hence 30. So not the first sequence, but the second sequence is going to be used. So I substitute n as 30 over here. So it will be 5 into 30 square plus 605 times 30. And the answer that we are going to get here is 22650. Now, the next part, which I'll just clear up some space and we'll just do the last part of this sequence. It says that find the number of rows needed for the first 10,000 tickets. So, first 10,000 tickets means that my nth term is 10,000. At what rows is 10,000 tickets being made? So, let's see what happens here. 5n square plus 605n should be around 10,000. So 5n square plus 605n minus 10,000 is a 0. I can take 5 common and I get n square plus 121n minus 20,000. 2,000 is equals to 0. Now, I can either feed this in my calculator and solve the quadratic formula, and the calculator gives me the answer around 14.7. That means at 14, I can also put 14 in the answer or 15 in the answer. We are almost nearing 15 rows. It's more than 14 rows. So around 15 rows will be used for 10,000 tickets. If I substitute this 15 here again in my formula, which has given me a number, I'll quickly verify and I'll get my answer as 10,200, which is near about 10,000. So at 14 rows, it is very less. It's less than 10,000. But for the first 10,000 tickets, I have to sell 15 rows or near about 15 rows. That solves this question. Hope this video helps. Thank you, and we'll move on to the next question on sequences soon.